5,000 years ago, in what is now Iraq, something unprecedented happened. For the first time in human history, tens of thousands of people lived together in one place. They built monumental temples reaching toward the sky. They invented writing. They created laws, organized labor, and developed the world's first complex economy. This wasn't just a village. This wasn't just a town. This was Uruk, the world's first true city. Uruk was so revolutionary that it defined what we mean by civilization. Everything that came after, from ancient Rome to modern New York, traces its urban DNA back to this single Mesopotamian city. By the end of this video, you'll understand how Uruk transformed humanity from scattered tribes into urban civilization, why its innovations still shape our lives today, and how its legendary king became the world's first superhero. Hit subscribe. This is where civilization itself was born. Before we explore Uruk, we must understand the world that created it. Mesopotamia. The cradle. The name means land between rivers, specifically the Tigris and Euphrates in modern Iraq. This was humanity's first experiment in civilization. Why here? Several crucial factors: fertile soil, annual floods deposited rich silt-reliable water, rivers provided irrigation for agriculture, flat terrain, easy to cultivate and build upon strategic location. Crossroads between Asia, Africa, and Europe. The agricultural revolution around 10,000 BCE. Humans in this region domesticated wheat and barley, learned irrigation techniques, settled into permanent villages, developed surplus food production. Agriculture changed everything. Surplus food freed people from constant foraging. Specialization became possible. Craftsmen, priests, administrators. Population density increased. Social complexity emerged. The Uruk period, 4000 to 3100 BCE. By 4000 BCE, settlements were growing. Villages became towns. Towns expanded into cities. Uruk emerged as the largest and most powerful. The location: Uruk sat in southern Mesopotamia, Sumer, near the Euphrates River, in an extremely fertile region at the intersection of trade routes. Surrounded by smaller settlements, it dominated. Today, Uruk's ruins lie near Warka, Iraq, about 300 kilometers south of Baghdad, in the middle of desert. Climate has changed. Protected as UNESCO World Heritage Site. Damaged by looting after 2003 Iraq War. If the idea that one city invented civilization as we know it fascinates you, drop a like. Uruk's story is extraordinary. What made Uruk different from earlier settlements? It wasn't just size, it was organization, complexity, and innovation. The scale: at its peak around 2900 BCE, Uruk was staggering. Population: 50,000 to 80,000 people. Area: 6 square kilometers, 2.3 square miles. City walls: 9.5 kilometers long, enclosing the entire urban area. To understand how massive this was, most human settlements had fewer than 1,000 people. Uruk was 50 to 80 times larger than typical villages. This concentration was unprecedented in human history. No city would exceed it for over 1,000 years. Urban planning: Uruk wasn't a random agglomeration of buildings. It showed deliberate planning. Inanna District, sacred precinct dedicated to Inanna, goddess of love and war. Anu District, temple complex for Anu, sky god. Residential areas, organized neighborhoods for different social classes. Industrial zones, pottery workshops, metalworking areas. Agricultural zones, surrounding fields managed from the city. The monumental architecture: Uruk's buildings were unlike anything humans had constructed before. The White Temple, built atop the Anu ziggurat elevated platform, 13 meters high, made of mud brick covered in white plaster, hence the name. Visible from miles away, dominating the landscape, represented connection between earth and heaven. The Inanna complex, massive temple district covering 230 by 265 meters, multiple temples, courtyards, and administrative buildings. Elaborate cone mosaics decorating walls, thousands of colored clay cones pressed into mud brick. Columns wrapped in copper sheeting. The largest architectural complex of its era. The city walls, the walls of Uruk, were legendary. Mentioned in the Epic of Gilgamesh as Gilgamesh's great achievement, constructed of baked brick, more durable than sun-dried, wide enough to drive chariots along the top. Included defensive towers at intervals. Building these walls required millions of bricks manufactured and baked. Organized labor forces of thousands. Sophisticated logistics, central planning, and authority. Social organization: Uruk's size demanded new forms of organization. Rulers/kings, political and sometimes religious. Leaders, priests. Managed temples, rituals, and temple economies. Administrators. Organized labor, managed resources, kept records. Craftsmen. Specialized workers, potters, metalworkers, weavers, farmers. Produced food for the entire population. Laborers. Construction workers, porters, servants. Economic complexity. The city developed sophisticated economics, specialization. People focused on specific crafts/roles. Trade networks. Goods moved between Uruk and distant regions. Redistribution systems. Temple and palace collected goods and redistributed them. Labor organization. Large-scale projects required coordinating thousands of workers. Why this matters? Uruk invented the concept of the city. Concentration of population. Specialized labor. Monumental public architecture. Hierarchical social organization. Centralized economic management. Uruk gave humanity something that would change history forever: writing. And it wasn't invented for poetry or literature. It was invented for accounting. The problem of complexity. As Uruk grew, record-keeping became impossible with memory alone. Tracking grain distributions, recording tax payments, managing temple offerings, organizing labor assignments, documenting trade transactions. Around 3400 to 3200 BCE, Uruk administrators developed the world's first writing system. Proto-cuneiform. The earliest writing was simple pictographic symbols. A picture of a head equals a head, or perhaps person. A picture of grain equals grain. A picture of foot equals foot, or perhaps to walk. Numbers represented by circular impressions. The tablets. Writing appeared on clay tablets. Soft clay impressed with a reed stylus. Tablets then dried or baked for permanence. Portable, durable, and reusable. Wet the clay again. Thousands survive from Uruk's earliest periods. The content. The earliest tablets recorded quantities of goods, barley, oil, animals. Lists of workers and their rations. Temple inventory and offerings. Trade transactions. A typical early tablet might read, in modern translation, 29 units of barley, 7 jars of oil, given to Kushim. Porter. Evolution to cuneiform. Over centuries, the system evolved. Pictographs became more abstract, easier to write quickly. Symbols rotated 90 degrees for convenience. The reed stylus created wedge-shaped impressions. Cuneiform equals wedge-shaped. Symbols began representing sounds, not just objects. Grammatical elements were added. The writing revolution. Writing enabled entirely new capabilities. 1. Long-term record keeping. Information could survive beyond human memory. Knowledge could accumulate across generations. History could be recorded and transmitted. 2. Complex administration. Managing large-scale economies. Organizing labor for major projects. Coordinating trade networks. Implementing legal systems. 3. Cultural transmission. Religious texts could be standardized. Mathematical knowledge could be preserved. Literary works could be created and shared. Educational systems could develop. 4. Political power. Treaties could be written and enforced. Laws could be codified and published. Royal propaganda could spread. Diplomatic correspondence became possible. The spread. Writing spread from Uruk throughout Mesopotamia. Other cities adopted and adapted the system. Cuneiform became the dominant script for 3,000 years. Eventually used to write multiple languages. Influenced the development of other writing systems. Who could write? Writing was a specialized skill. Professional scribes trained for years. Scribal schools taught reading, writing. Mathematics. Literacy was limited to elite classes. Scribes held prestigious social positions. Writing was invented not for art or literature, but for accounting, tracking barley, and counting sheep. What does this say about what drives human innovation? Share your thoughts in the comments. Uruk's most famous ruler was Gilgamesh, a king who became literature's first hero and humanity's first superhero. The historical Gilgamesh archaeological evidence suggests Gilgamesh was a real king. Ruled Uruk around 2700 BC. Listed in the Sumerian king list. Credited with building Uruk's Great Walls. Contemporary texts mention him. Over centuries, Gilgamesh transformed from historical ruler to mythic hero, eventually becoming the protagonist of the world's oldest epic poem. The Epic of Gilgamesh. The epic was written in cuneiform on clay tablets. Earliest versions date to around 2100 BC. Standard version compiled around 1200 BCE by Sinlekianini, discovered in modern times in Ashurbanipal's library at Nineveh, 7th century BCE. Consists of 12 tablets containing about 3,000 lines. The story. Gilgamesh the tyrant. Described as 2/3 god, 1/3 man, oppresses his people through harsh rule. Gods create Enkidu, wild man, to challenge him. The great friendship. Gilgamesh and Enkidu fight and become best friends. They Embark on adventures together. Kill the monster Humbaba in the cedar forest. Kill the bull of heaven sent by goddess Ishtar. The quest for immortality. Enkidu dies as divine punishment. Gilgamesh, devastated, seeks immortality. Travels to meet Utnapishtim, survivor of the Great Flood. Learns that immortality is beyond human reach. Returns to Uruk, accepting his mortality. The flood story. The epic contains a flood narrative strikingly similar to Noah's flood. Utnapishtim, warned by gods of coming deluge, builds a boat and saves animals. Flood destroys humanity. Boat lands on mountain. Gods regret the destruction. What the epic reveals beyond the adventure story. The epic shows 1. Urban values. Gilgamesh's greatness tied to building Uruk's wall. Civilization contrasted with wilderness. Enkidu's transformation. Urban life presented as humanity's proper state. 2. Mortality and meaning. Central theme. Humans must accept death. Legacy through achievement. Building, creating. Fame as a form of immortality. 3. Friendship and love. Deep emotional bonds between men. Celebrated loss and grief. Explored profoundly human connection as life's meaning. 4. Divine human relationship. Gods are powerful but capricious. Humans must navigate divine whims. Religious ritual and proper behavior are crucial. Historical impact. The Epic of Gilgamesh influenced later literature. Biblical flood narrative. Greek hero myths. Heracles, Odysseus. Themes of quest and transformation. The hero's journey. Archetype. Gilgamesh and Uruk. Epic celebrates Uruk's greatness. Detailed descriptions of city walls. Temple architecture praised urban civilization as human achievement. Uruk presented as the center of the world. What was it actually like to live in the world's first city? Housing. Most people lived in mud-brick houses. Flat roofs for sleeping and hot weather. Courtyards for cooking and daily activities. Few windows for security and climate control. Wealthier homes had multiple rooms and second stories. Diet and food. Uruk's residents ate staples: barley, wheat, dates. Proteins: fish, mutton, goat, occasional beef. Vegetables: onions, garlic, leeks, lettuce. Dairy: cheese, butter, yogurt. Beverages: beer, very common. Occasionally wine. Beer was central to Sumerian life. Drunk through straws to filter out sediment. Multiple varieties existed given as rations to workers, used in religious ceremonies. Considered essential nutrition. Clothing: typical dress: woolen or linen garments, draped and wrapped, not sewn. Men wore kilts or robes. Women wore long dresses. Elite classes wore elaborate jewelry. Work and occupation. The city's economy required diverse labor. Temple workers: priests and priestesses. Temple administrators: craftsmen, producing religious items. Craftsmen: potters, producing storage jars, drinking vessels. Metalworkers: copper tools, jewelry, weavers, textiles for clothing and trade. Builders: constructing and maintaining buildings. Farmers: cultivated fields outside city walls. Managed irrigation systems. Raised livestock. Delivered produce to city markets. Laborers: construction workers on monumental projects. Porters: moving goods. Servants in wealthy households. Merchants and traders brought goods from distant regions. Managed trade networks operated in market areas. Religion in daily life. Religion permeated existence. Daily offerings at household shrines. Participation in temple rituals. Major festivals throughout the year. Consultation of priests for important decisions. The temples as economic centers. Temples weren't just religious sites. Employed thousands of workers. Owned vast agricultural lands. Ran workshops and industries. Distributed rations to workers. Functioned as banks and administrative centers. Social classes. Uruk society was hierarchical. Elite: kings/rulers, high priests and priestesses. Major landowners, successful merchants, free citizens. Craftsmen: small farmers, lower-level administrators, soldiers, dependent workers. Temple employees, palace servants, people working off debt. Slaves: war captives, debt slaves, purchased slaves, used for domestic service and heavy labor. Justice and law: social order maintained through local judges resolving disputes. Temple authorities handling religious matters. Royal edicts on major issues. Compensation systems for crimes. Physical punishments for serious offenses. Innovation and technology. Uruk was a hotbed of innovation. Potter's wheel: mass production of ceramics. Bronze working: stronger tools and weapons. Irrigation: complex canal systems. Mathematics: developed for administration and architecture. Astronomy: tracking seasons for agriculture. Uruk's dominance didn't last forever. Like all great cities, it eventually declined, but its legacy shaped human civilization permanently. The peak and decline Uruk reached its maximum around 2900 to 2800 BCE. Largest city in the world, center of trade networks spanning hundreds of miles, cultural and religious influence across Mesopotamia from 2500 BCE onward. Political power shifted to other cities. Lagash. Regional conflicts damaged trade networks. Climate change reduced agricultural productivity. Population gradually declined. Cities rose to replace Uruk. The same innovations that made Uruk successful enabled competitors. Writing spread, breaking Uruk's administrative monopoly. Other cities built monumental architecture. Trade networks diversified. Military technology equalized power. The later history Uruk continued for thousands of years but never regained supremacy. Remained an important religious center. Periodically revived under various empires: Akkadian, Babylonian, Persian. Finally abandoned around 300 CE, became ruins buried under desert sand. Archaeological discovery. Modern rediscovery began in 1849. British explorer William Loftus identified the site. German Archaeological Institute began systematic excavations in 1912. Work continues periodically to the present. Thousands of cuneiform tablets recovered. Monumental architecture exposed and documented. Challenges to the site. Uruk faces threats: looting after 2003 Iraq war. Climate and erosion damage. Modern development nearby. Limited resources for protection. Political instability in region. The legacy: what Uruk gave humanity. Uruk's innovations became the foundation of civilization. 1. Urban planning. Organized city districts. Monumental public architecture. Defensive walls. Concentrated population centers. 2. Writing. Record-keeping systems. Administrative documentation. Literary creation. Historical records. 3. Complex social organization. Hierarchical structures. Specialized labor. Professional classes. Bureaucratic administration. 4. Economic systems. Market economies. Trade networks. Taxation and redistribution. Labor organization. 5. Religious architecture. Monumental temples. Ziggurats. Sacred precincts. Institutional religion. 6. Cultural production. Epic literature. Mythological systems. Artistic traditions. Educational institutions. Every city after Uruk, the urban template Uruk, created spread worldwide. Mesopotamian cities adopted its model. Egyptian cities showed similar organization. Indus Valley civilization developed comparable systems. Later civilizations built on these foundations. The uncomfortable truth: Uruk also established patterns we still struggle with: social inequality and class stratification, concentration of wealth and power, exploitation of labor, urban poverty alongside urban wealth, environmental impact of large populations. Why Uruk matters today. Understanding Uruk helps us understand ourselves. We are urban creatures by evolution. 5,000 years of city living. Our institutions descend from Uruk's templates. Our writing systems trace back to cuneiform. Our economic structures eco-temple/palace systems. Uruk stands at the beginning of recorded history, literally. Before Uruk, we have archaeology. After Uruk, we have written records, documented rulers, recorded events. What makes Uruk special? Not that it was the only early city, others developed independently, but that it was the first to achieve critical mass. Size large enough to require new forms of organization. Complexity demanding systematic innovation. Influence spreading across regions. Model that others could observe and adapt. The human achievement. Uruk represents humanity's boldest experiment, bringing thousands of people together in one place, creating institutions to manage urban complexity. Developing technologies, writing, mathematics, complex architecture, building monuments, expressing collective identity and ambition. The enduring questions. Uruk raises profound questions. What motivated humans to live in cities despite the challenges? Why did the urban model succeed so dramatically? What did we gain and lose in the transition from village to city? How do Uruk's innovations still shape our lives? The dark side: we must acknowledge that Uruk also established warfare between cities, social inequality, slavery, environmental exploitation, power concentration. Looking at ruins, seeing ourselves. When we look at Uruk's ruins today, we see where our own urban existence began. We recognize institutions we still live within. We understand that our modern life is ancient. We realize that we are Uruk's descendants, the ultimate legacy. 5,000 years after Uruk's founding, more than half of humanity lives in cities. Urban population continues growing. Cities drive innovation, culture, economy. The urban experiment Uruk began continues. If this journey to civilization's birthplace has shown you how profoundly ancient Uruk shaped modern life, smash that like button and subscribe for more investigations into the innovations that created our world. And here's my question. If you could visit Uruk at its peak in 2900 BCE, What aspect of the world's first city would you want to experience? The massive temples? The bustling markets? The scribes inventing writing? Drop your answer in the comments. Hit that notification bell. Until then, remember, every time you walk through a city, read written words, or participate in complex institutions, you're living Uruk's legacy. The first city never really fell. It just spread across the entire world.